Bill, well, thanks for agreeing to the interview. First of all, a little bit about your background. You had extensive military service for many years prior to 1970, where a certain aspect of that military service kicked upstairs, so you were able to see certain things that you were not able to see beforehand. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
It actually started much longer in my past than that. I was reared in a military family. My father's an Air Force colonel. He's retired now. He was a command pilot. And as a child, I remember sitting around I remember the pilots at our house sitting around the kitchen table talking about their exploits in the cockpit and what they had seen in the skies. And some of that talk involved UFOs and what some of them called Foo Fighters. And I traveled all over the world, lived on military bases for most of my life. I was really an indoctrinated individual, you might say. I was as establishment as you could get, as gung-ho, pro-government, pro-America, pro-military. And that's why I went into the military, because that had been so much of my life. I went into the Air Force. I was in the Strategic Air Command for 4 years as an aircraft and missile hydraulic technician, which is, I worked on the pneumatic and hydraulic systems of B-52 bombers, KC-135 aircraft, and Minuteman missiles. I had a secret security clearance. That's where I saw my first atomic bomb. I mean, we worked around in these planes, especially the ones on the alert pad, were always loaded, ready to go drop these bombs at a moment's notice. But while I was in the Air Force, I met sergeants, men who were older than me, and had been in the Air Force for quite a while, told me that they had participated in projects that had recovered crashed extraterrestrial craft, what you call UFOs. And they never told these stories unless they'd had quite a bit to drink. So I never really believed it. I thought, well, these guys are running a scam on me, even though I'd heard about these things when I was a kid. I just still didn't believe in them. They're just so far out in left field, it's not something that you really give any serious thought to until something personal happens, which came later. While I left the Air Force, I went into the Navy, which is really where I wanted to be in the first place. I'd always had this tremendous feeling and connection with the ocean. I was an excellent swimmer, but I had a problem as a child. I had chronic motion sickness. If I got in a car and we went on a long trip, I got deathly ill, and same with boats or anything. I couldn't ride on the things at the carnival that went around and round because it just made me tremendously ill. But I decided after I had gone through the Air Force experience that sick or not, I was going to go in the Navy because that's really what I had wanted to do. So I did. Volunteered for submarine duty and was assigned to the USS Tyru, SS-416, which was a diesel-electric boat, World War II type, that had been reconfigured. When I went on board the boat, it was in the dry dock at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard and had literally been cut in half. They put in a 12-foot sonar section and then 3 domes on the deck for triangulating targets using sonar. And this was really one of the most up-to-date electronically submarines that we had. Wasn't a nuclear submarine, but as far as the ability to approach, get close to a target and destroy it, it had a better capacity to do that than any other boat that we had. While we were on a transit from the Portland-Seattle area on the surface, I actually saw, I was the port lookout, and I saw the most incredible thing that I think I've ever seen in my life. And it had such a profound effect upon my view of the universe and the world that we live in that I wish everybody could experience this. I saw come up out of the ocean, from beneath the surface of the sea, a huge disc-shaped craft about the size of a Midway-class aircraft carrier, which is tremendous in size. Even though that's one of our smallest carriers there was then, it's still a huge, tremendously big object. Came up out of the ocean and rose into the air and tumbled on its axis and went up into the clouds, and I was awestruck, dumbstruck. And I mean dumbstruck, literally. I could not utter a sound. And my first impulse was to tell the officer of the deck that I'd seen a flying saucer. And then, luckily for me, I couldn't talk. Because on second thought, that's not what I really wanted to say. Because I didn't want to be the only Looney Tunes character on a submarine with a tight-knit crew that you had to live in close quarters with. Because that's a hell of a way to live. So I told the officer of the deck that I'd seen something about 15 degrees off the port bow at a relative distance of about 2.5 nautical miles. And he began to look in that area. And the starboard lookout had heard me tell him this, and he began to look over there. And while we were all three watching, either the same craft or another one exactly like it came down out of the clouds, tumbled again on its, why it did this maneuver, I don't know, but every single time it did it. It's like it came down in this attitude, and then it flipped over, and then entered the water. And the water just appeared to open up in front of it. It's just like the account in the Bible about the parting of the Red Sea. That's exactly what happened. The sea actually parted, and this thing went into the water, and it closed up behind it. And this big spray went up into the air. But it wasn't a spray from the craft hitting the water. It was a spray from the water coming back in to fill up this hole that had been created.